James, I don't know about you, but I want to learn how to be a fantastic game developer.
Well, I already am a fantastic game developer.
Well, it's a good thing you're here to help guide us all through it then, especially today where we're going to be talking about sprints.
That's right.
I had no idea that track and field was so important to game development.
Well, yeah, when that anxiety hits, when the code doesn't compile correctly and it's due tomorrow, and it helps to have a good, strong heart.
We're very lame, James.
I know, we are so lame. We're old. I'm old. I'm getting old. Anyways, sprints. So we talk a lot already about project management and agile and task management, and I mentioned that, but just how do we go about organizing a plan to get a game developed, right? Like, what does that look like in the web of things? How do we get there? How do we start? And so a lot of the times, when I'm speaking to indie developers and just in general through different kinds of networking, you get asked a lot about, like, how do we start, right? How do we take a design? We got an idea, we have a roadmap, we know roughly how long things are going to take us to do, and now we're just going to keep planning because we're stuck in this phase of, like, we don't know how to continue and keep going. So the last time we met, we talked about an episode that will be coming up, which is Toy Box Method. Keep an ear out for that. And I guess that would come out after this one or before this one. Okay, great. I don't have to.
Yeah, no, that one's already out. Yeah, that one's already out.
Yeah, it is up now. But yeah, so a part of the Toy Box Method is not worrying about any of this production stuff, which is very counterintuitive for somebody like me, where I like to be prim and proper and precise, right? I like all the answers before I need them. And Toy Box Method was the opposite, right? It was all about getting in, finding something that feels good, tacking on a little bit more, and then does that feel good? And where do we want to take the game? So Toy Box Method of development is a lot less about having a plan. It's more about feel, right? Vibe. Does this feel good to play, kind of thing.
Well, Toy Box Method, like, the name is great for it because it's basically like a kid going to a box and just pulling out toys and seeing how they play with each other, and he doesn't really know what he's gonna really do until he just starts grabbing stuff and trying it out. So I think it's a great term to call Toy Box development.
I always think of Andy, Toy Story, right? He's all with his toys and Mr. Potato Head and the train and all that kind of stuff, right? Like the opening sequences. And yeah, part of that process when we were talking about it, right, was the difference between something like Agile, Waterfall, and Scrum. Scrum was great because it's all about doing small, super small, iterative updates and passes, and then getting immediate feedback and then pivoting, right?
Which is kind of along the Toy Box side of things.
Yeah, like to the extreme. It leans into that to the extreme. And a lot of developers, especially when they're new, they start there because that's like the lowest barrier.
That's how I thought we were going to be starting.
That's how many do. But what they quickly find is that when you do that, but you don't incorporate any planning, any long-term like strategy or where you want to go, any long-term planning, you get caught there. You get stuck there. That's how you turn into developers who have been working on the same project for 3 or 4 years and are like, man, I don't know what this Frankenstein project is, but it's not fun. I don't like it. You know what? I'm going to start a new project, but it's better this time because I learned from last time. And not really. You're just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And yeah, Agile is more about, let's have a consistent plan, a goal. This is what we're going to aim for. We think we know how we're going to build it, and we're going to figure it out as we go. And if we get it wrong, it's fine. At least we fired the catapult in the right direction. And yeah, anyways, so that's all fine, right? The rough project management, producing, all that kind of fun stuff. Now we're coming down to the point of our talk today, which is sprint planning, which is how do we actually effectively do those things? How do we start? Do you have an idea where we're going to go next? Like, why are sprints important?
Well, I feel like they're important because they give us like a like a goal and a direction that we're running towards. And it's like, wait, is that why it's called sprints? Because I always just assumed it was a sprint because you had just a time that you wanted, or like there was a goal. Are sprints more about the time, or is the sprint more about like a specific goal?
It's about a goal. It's mostly about the goal, right? So, waterfall, the entire project, start to finish. We're going to plan it out now, and then we're going to go execute. That's a marathon, right? Like
Yeah.
it's 10 kilometers. It's just we're going to chug along and keep going until we get there. And then when we get there, we know we're done, right? Sprints are not that. They're the 100-meter dash. They're like, we know we want this feature, and this audio effect, and we have no idea. We haven't built the system to incorporate it, but this is what we know we need to make. Artists, you go over there. Audio guys go over there. Designers, coders, you're gonna huddle in this corner and go. And we're all gonna check back next week, in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks.
So then, how much of it is where you have your game design document, you have the plan of what you want to do, and it's like, is the sprint, is it always like on set intervals of time, or is it more like, here's the feature, like here's these specific features and these specific audio things, that's the sprint, and then maybe we know that we have an idea that this sprint's going to be like a week or something like that, and then the next sprint we know it's like, okay, now we're working on like implementing this next feature, it's going to be a bit longer, we know it's going to be like 2 weeks, so that's like the next sprint. How do they usually break them up?
Well, it depends, right? Depending on who's actually doing that management process, right? And this is a tangent, but most people start doing this kind of work and they don't dedicate a specific person to take ownership of it, and then nobody does it after a few months.
When you say take ownership of it, are you talking about the planning process? Like
Yeah,
figuring out what the sprints are going to be and when they'll happen?
exactly. Somebody's got to track it. Somebody's got to put all that stuff into a ticket system of some kind, right? Whether you want to be super daring and use Google Docs to track your production, or you're using Jira, Hack and Plan, any number of the tools that we've already talked about, somebody really does need to take own, like they're responsible. They have to be the ones to do that. And if you have it
Why
spread between
can't just
multiple
all
people,
of
it's
them do it?
fine. Because if you all do it, you're all going to do it your own way. You're all going to have different ways of doing it. And let's hypothetically say in 3 months, everybody is still doing it, which would be amazing. That almost never happens. But you're all doing it your own way. Everyone has their own way of filling it out, their own way of judging whether or not something is done, in progress, something is like ready for testing or QA, right? It just gets way more complicated. And if you ever scale the team in the future, you're going to have somebody jump into the team and be like, okay, how do we run things? And then you have like 4 or 5 different management styles. And then
Yeah,
now,
but
like,
if
it
Bob
gets
does
confusing.
audio and Karen does art, can't they both have their own individual sprints for like,
Well,
maybe they don't
what,
start and stop at the same times?
so what about Doug, who does design, who needs to know what they are doing and read it quickly so that they can pivot and make decisions that affect programming? Or what about Susan, who is doing biz dev and producing work and needs to reliably be able to go to the team at any point and take a screenshot, if you will, of where everything is, a snapshot, and just be like, okay, what's the state of the project? We're like 13% done our mechanics and we're 10% done our systems, and our content is at 2%, but our design is a little further here. And they can go have that conversation with studio owners, publishers, investors, sell the game, etc. Right? So like everybody still has to work from the same pot, right? Think of it that way. It's like a hot pot meal. Everybody's contributing something, but you probably don't want to eat at dinner time if somebody's throwing in lobster and somebody else is throwing in a stone and somebody else is throwing in a potato and somebody else is throwing in like spinach. There's no rhyme or reason, right? So that's why you need at least, I would say, well, I'm most rather like 2 or 3 depending on team size, but I think like one person per 5 to 10 team members is a really good ratio. That's manageable.
Okay,
Anything more than that starts to be difficult.
and so then everybody's on like one sprint is for the whole team then, because then the sprint can be planned out so that, um, so and so, like the artist is working on something so that at the end of this sprint, ideally that's done. And then that can move on to the next person who needs that for the next sprint after that for what they're working on. And so it kind of like chains things together.
Yeah, it's a way of keeping everybody in progress, making sure everybody has something to progress on. But it's also about just making sure that we are all still working in alignment and that we are moving towards the goal, which is a fully developed, ideally bug-free game.
That makes
Um,
sense. And like
yeah,
normally, James, my next question would be like, okay, so then how do we prepare our sprint? Where do we go for that? But thankfully, we've got a few episodes we've already done where we've broken through all that kind of stuff. Like I'll have a list down at the bottom, but we did like we had a two-parter on like building your game's first blueprint, like going through and so if anybody's unsure on how to actually prepare for how to set up these different sprints, I'll have a list of a few different episodes in the description as well, so you can go through that. James, if you want to touch briefly on it, we can, but I don't think we need to go into in depth with this because if people don't already know that we've got the episodes for that, they'll go farther in depth for it here. See, I told you I'd remember. For those
yeah,
listening,
that's because
before we started this episode, I was like, James, I have a note in here about referencing past episodes. I don't know what this means. And then it came back to me.
it always does. Yeah, I mean, we've talked at length about this, and anybody who spends any decent amount of time talking with me knows that I'm just run on repeat with this kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just making sure that you have a target, right? You have a target and a goal in mind. What kind of game are you making? What are the mechanics? What are the features? What's your scope? Don't wait till later. Create the rules now. Even if you don't understand how to make them, it doesn't matter. You just need to have something to aim for. If you're just going to start building stuff and firing off into the void, I mean, all the luck to you, but it makes more sense if you want to grow as a sustainable team that wants to try and do this for a living. You got to do it right. And that's where you start is you make sure you make a plan. You have a bunch of stuff to work on, and that's for everybody involved. Don't just make a game design and there's nothing in there for code or there's nothing in there for audio. Like everybody who's a part of the team, who's a part of the sprint, should have a great big list of ideas of things that they need to work on under this umbrella, which is the game idea, right? You don't want them just running off making random screechy noises, and you're like, this doesn't fit our cozy game. Like,
James, when we
not
finish
good,
the game
right?
that we're working on right now, next game, that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I'll have to eat my words.
Yeah. We'll have to
Yeah.
we'll revamp the whole podcast. Like, hey guys,
Yeah, we could
the
do a
best way to
special
make video
episode.
games is just whatever. Yeah, we'll buy you a couple shredders as well, and that'll be the episode. It's like, oh James, let's see you keep going.
Yeah, this is your resume, James.
You didn't need all that work, did you? You just had to go out there and do it.
Okay, so that's what you should have right in place before you start your planning. Hopefully, you're there at this point. So moving on, right? It's your milestones, right? That's really where we start. And the milestones, if you listened again to previous task management episodes that we've done, the milestones are supposed to be key development phases, right? This is what's commonly referred to as like your alphas, your betas, your beta completes, your gold releases, live ops, prototype, vertical slice, etc. Right? Early
if I
access.
so if the milestones you say are typically really big like that, if this is my first game and I've never worked on one before, could my milestones be just like a character in moving around interacting with stuff? Like, can that be a milestone if this is my first time?
Yeah, of course, right? The point of the milestone is quite literally what it means. It's a marker, right? It's a marker where you progressed to a certain point that there's really no. I want to say it's not that it's no turning back. It's a sign of significant achievement is what it is. But that significant achievement doesn't have to be something grandiose. It could simply be, hey, we decided on the design. We know what we're going to make now. The next milestone is we slapped wheels on and they don't fall off. Like that's a valid milestone, right? Early on, you have your prototype, which can be a milestone in itself, which is just we have an idea. We know roughly the features and mechanics that are most important to make sure that this idea works. just laid down like a single level. We've talked about this about the game, the narration game that we're making as well, where it's like, what are the key things to make a game like this possible? The unique selling features, right? Which is like the identity. So that's your prototype milestone, is we're going to build all of the features, mechanics, content, whatever's necessary just to prove that our idea is feasible. Like we can build it. Here it is. It works. It looks terrible. There's no art. There's no audio, right? It's just functioning. But that's a valid prototype milestone because now you can present that to somebody with experience, publisher, whoever, other game developers, even gamers, and just be like, hey, what's your feedback on this? If they play that and they're like, this doesn't feel good, or I don't like this, and they have nothing nice to say, in worst cases, or they don't have anything like constructive. It's just like, oh, this is nice. Like that's not good either, right? You want people to be interested. So
So if
that's a
my
good
milestone is
stage for
to
that.
have something playable that people can try, that's fine. And then if my next milestone after is like now we're revamping and re-editing stuff, like so that the milestones are pretty dependent on what our current goals are as the team. It's not like
Yeah,
these are the generic milestones that all game dev teams need to have in order to, complete their game. It's like it's all team dependent. So I might have like completely different milestones, even if we're making basically the same game. Depending on the team, the milestones could be completely different.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, that
And it's
makes
all genre
milestones
based
not feel
too.
so intimidating anymore.
Yeah, it's really just a term just to say, hey, we've entered the next phase of development, right? In terms of like generic across the board milestones, that's your prototype, that's your alpha, right? It's your beta. I would fit in there a vertical slice probably after your alpha, in between beta, and after that it's your gold release, right? And then live ops. So those are like your five major milestones. Yeah. And
I'm gonna
prototype
pretend I know
is
what all of
just
those mean.
I'm just was just about to do that. I was like, I should elaborate. Yeah. So prototype is just proving the mechanics, proving the ideas. You don't need to prove the level layouts. You don't need to prove your team's chops at designing a good character. Like people don't understand that. It's
It's just like
just
the Unreal
proving.
Engine basic blocks.
Yeah, it's like what's the core essence of this game's mechanic? Like a valid prototype for Spider-Man would be swinging around from building to building. Do you need to know web fluid? Do you need to know how fast he's going? Do
Like
you
just
need to
like a
be able to change
box that
speed?
has like
Like
the
just
stuff swinging from it.
yeah, just like a whole bunch of pillars, and then you're just like flipping out webs and graph swinging from point to point to point. And if you could do that and it's fun, it's interesting, you show it off to people, you ask for feedback, and people are like, oh, what are you doing with this? Oh, this is interesting. Hey, it'd be really cool if it's sped up when I swing down and it slows down when I like if I hang on too long. When people are giving you suggestions like that, that's a really good sign that they're like invested. They're invested enough to think
Yeah,
about this beyond the initial like interaction.
because I feel like the
Sorry.
worst and the worst advice and feedback I ever get from people is, oh yeah, no, that's really good, I like it, because it doesn't mean anything. But when they start saying like, oh yeah, it'd be really cool if you did this, like from what you're saying, it means generally I would say it means that they like the core concepts and now they're already past that and they're thinking more of what could be done with it, and that's that's a successful thing. Doesn't mean you
That's the
have to do what
magic.
they want. It just means that they're liking it enough already that they're past thinking about whether or not they like it.
Yeah. So like if you understand human behavior and stuff like that, right? Like it takes cognitive brain power to think about something beyond the presentation of what it is, right? Like if I gave you an empty thing with a hole in it and you're just like, oh yeah, that's nice. But if you're like, hey, I could put something in here. What are you gonna put in here? Is this for food? Is this for what? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it
there's
makes your
already that
brain.
more like like connected to it. Even you
Yeah,
saying that stuff made me more invested in the cup.
exactly, right? Like you see me drinking a cup. Is anybody wondering if I'm drinking tea, if I'm drinking
I
coffee?
wasn't
Is there
before,
whiskey
but
in
I am
here?
now. What's in there,
You'll
James?
never
What's in
know.
the cup?
You'll never know.
Ah, damn.
That's for next episode. You better show up. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, I'll be
But
there.
that's what we're looking for at that stage in prototype, right? Is we're looking for somebody to become like on their own, invested beyond just looking or like playing because I asked them to, right? When they're engaging on their own with their own thoughts and critique and feelings and everything else, that's a really good sign. Even if it's bad, even if people are like, I don't understand why you put this double jump in here. This is silly. Like it should just be this way. You suck. Just as a generic crappy message that doesn't feel good. But you know what? They still thought about it enough to be like, yeah, I don't like this. Here's why I don't like it. I think you should have did this. Like that's a really good sign as well because you did something well enough, you still made them think about it. And so now is a time to figure out, okay, well, how far in alignment is their feedback? Are they just trying to give me first person shooter advice and I'm building a cozy game? That's probably not relevant. But there was probably something there that they didn't like. What was it? What can we change
We've
about
gone
what we
way
are
off
doing?
topic now.
A little bit, yeah. But that's prototype, right? That's prototype. Alpha is your systems and mechanics have to be like working, is the way I've always presented this to people, right? All your game systems, all your game mechanics, doesn't matter how many you have, they have to be they have to be working, they have to be like modular. They can't just work on the loan in a map
Do they
by
still have to look
themselves.
good? Or are we not at
No,
that point yet?
we're not at that point, and we're not polished. This is the key thing. We're not polished either. This is just all the systems are in, all the trading, all the economy, all the like AI, all the systems are in. They're not fully complete, but they're enough that the game can still run and all the systems work. There's no system that just breaks down because that other system doesn't work, right?
It still
That's
takes
your
me a bit
alpha.
getting used to that idea because in my head, when I think of someone developing a game, I imagine it's like if they're like Satisfactory. In my head, they like build and craft the little like the mining machine, and they've already got it all like modeled and figured out, and then they put it in. They're like, does it work? But no, that's that. You
Yeah.
keep reiterating that's not how it's done.
Exactly, right? So you start with that. That's your alpha, right? Like that's where you're going from. And then beta starts from there. It's the expectation for beta is that you're going to make all those features and mechanics complete. Means all the little tweaks, all the little polish, all of the additional systems that maybe you didn't
Is that
quite fully
polished
polish.
towards like the mechanics themselves or the game in general?
The mechanics and systems like on their own, they are polished. It's not anything after beta phase is going to be purely bug fixing, quality of life, content patches, things like that. Like we're now to the point where technically speaking, the programming side, the technical side of the game is mostly complete
And
in
that's
terms of
done
design.
that way. And so that's done that way so that if there's any like issues or problems that come up where they realize something has to change while they're figuring that out, then now you're not just losing a whole bunch of work that you put otherwise into like the models and the animations and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So that's you hit it like perfectly. That's exactly why we break them out like this. Like alpha, we don't really care about content. We're thinking content in terms of like art pipelines, but like you said, because we're building all of our mechanics and features, we can naturally build the foundation of the art pipeline, right? Audio pipeline in tandem. So like the alphas stage for artists is about, do we have character customization? Do we have weapons that have customization systems? Did we plan that out? How can we possibly model this stuff and make it performant or animate it and make it performant given the context of the features and systems that the programmers are building, right? That's how those two align in alpha phase. Beta is where the programmers are no longer refactoring, right? They're not hearing input from artists and animators and whoever else and then rebuilding entire tool sets or systems, mechanics, etc., to get aligned. That stage is done in alpha. Now it's about polishing this out, getting all the nitty gritty in, making sure that the designers having tons of time to go through the systems and make it feel good as they possibly can. And artists or the visual department, let's say, right, VFX too, I didn't include them, but like that whole crew, that's what beta is really for, is for them to start pushing out content. So when you think about all the games that have gone to the beta, it's a public beta, but it's missing missions, it's missing boss fights, it's missing the next zone. If we think about Grounded 2, you can't even go towards the sandbox yet because it's not done. Well, that's because we're in the beta phase. We're still building out content, but all the systems are there. All the game features are there. Any updates at this point to that stuff is all quality of life. It's all presentation. It's all bug fixing, right? So it's
So
kind of like
the
a
betas that
polish shift.
the betas we get to play then, like Guild Wars 2 when it came out and there was that early beta access. That's not like that's just like beta in the terms of, consumer sense. It's not the beta in the game development sense.
Yes, exactly. Right. So what you're really playing is more of like a demo. You're doing public. You're doing public, or rather, you're paying to bug test the game for the developers. That's that kind of stuff, right? That's what's happening on the consumer side. But the development beta has already been going through. We're actually in beta complete phase, which is where we're pushing out all content. This is where studios are typically onboarding dozens of artists or outsourcing teams, and it's just model after model after model being plugged into the system because the system works. It just needs pieces, it needs content, it needs writing, it needs audio, it needs voiceover work. But that's the beta phase, right? Beta complete. Some people separate them. I don't. I think it's the same phase personally, right? But after that comes your gold release, which is making sure everything is ready, right? It's polish. It's making sure that we're making all of our platform partners happy, whether that's game certification for things like Switch or, well, I guess Nintendo, right? Company wise, Sony, Microsoft. We got to make sure our game is in alignment with what they want as a company because they all want different things and they all have different requirements. Your game sometimes needs code specific to each engine. So even after you make the game and it's technically done and it's fully polished, it's still probably not done depending on which platforms you want to be on because you have to make bespoke things for them to make sure that it's done right, basically, right? And that's what the gold phase is. It's like, how do we get there so everybody is happy with what we're doing and then we can push live and the game is released and we deal with all the fun stuff that comes with releasing a game, launch date, right? The final milestone, which I included just because for mindset, but really live ops is kind of like a whole brand new set depending on what kind of game you're making. If you're doing a game that's all content updates, stuff like what's a good example off the top of my head? Dead by Daylight, right? Like lots of content update, lots of DLC, lots of reiteration. Well, a lot of systems don't necessarily have to be remade. You're just making new content and the odd interesting feature, making certain killers or survivors have certain perks and level up systems. Like that's as far as like the development goes. It's mostly about creating a new experience out of this toolbox that you've already made, right? So that's different. And then if you're considering DLC, where it's a whole new expansion on the core game where you're adding new features, new mechanics, maybe you're doing base building, something that you're adding on to the game that wasn't there in the beginning, that would actually go through a whole new cycle of this like alpha beta gold release again because you have to go through the whole steps. You have to figure out, does our new systems work and can we get them to work, and is the experience good for the DLC? Is it good? Great. Let's expand on the content for the DLC. And then let's go through and make sure that this DLC is compliant across all terms, again, services and platforms, and again, and then you keep going, right? But those are all the critical phases for milestones, generically speaking. What those look like for each team, genre, it's all specific to per project. But that's a good way to categorize them, thinking about them.
Okay,
So first
that makes
milestone,
sense.
prototype. I already repeated myself a few times, but yeah, if you remember, like what should go in the prototype?
What should go in the prototype? Just the very bare bone basics of, you know, of like the core experience of what the game is.
Yeah, your unique selling points, right? And just uh, for now, listening, unique selling point is not we have a game economy. That's not a unique selling point. Having an inventory is not a unique selling point,
We
right?
have in-game purchases that our developers can spend money on while we're testing it.
Uh, right? But no, a unique selling point is a very specific niche mechanic or experience that can't be really experienced anywhere else, or at least through, let's say, the lens that your game is offering, right? The perspective.
But like if it's
So
not like if I'm just making a 3D platformer because I love 3D platformers, it's not really gonna and if I'm just making a generic one, it's not really gonna have anything super selling. So it would just be like, jumping some blocks and moving things and that would like, that's all it would be.
yeah, so if you think of it like a car, what do you need for a car? Well, you need a way for the car to move. So let's say pedals, and you need some wheels and a frame to attach the wheels and put the pedals on, and then maybe
We're
a
talking about in
chain
a
so that
like
the
a
pedals
game experience, not like I'm sure
in a
if
game
a mechanic
experience,
a
right?
mechanic is screaming at us right now if they're listening to this.
Yeah, but you need the frame to attach the wheels to put on the pedals and a chain to put the pedals attached to the wheels, and you need a steering wheel attached to at least the front two wheels so that you could steer, and maybe you could put a seat so that the tester can have some comfort. That's your bare minimum prototype for like a vehicle, hypothetically, right? You want to do that same kind of target as a prototype for whatever your personal idea or game is. Like you just want the bare minimum necessary to make it work, right? A great example of this would be an idle game. Super simple. Click button, button go up. There's my prototype. No, not really, because the core thing that makes an incremental game so,
We also have a
like
whole episode
genre
on
specific.
prototypes, so if anybody wants to know more
Okay,
about
there we
them,
go.
they can
Yeah.
go and
Yeah, go listen to that one
they
too. We
can go
talk
listen
about
to
tons
that
of stuff.
episode.
Yeah, yeah. And anyways, what I'm trying
That'll
to
be in
say
the
here is
description
that
down below.
yes, the incremental is managing big numbers. It's not just simply, oh, I reached 1,000 and now I'm gonna like increment my integer on the end to be from A, or my string number to be from like A to B, and oh, now we're in 1B instead of 1,000 A. Like you could do that. Visually, experience wise, it's not very often that a player that likes that kind of game is really going to notice it or really care too much about it, because it's just number go up is what the vibe is. But fundamentally, if you want to do something different, you have to understand how the system works and what's bare minimum required. So I bring up idle games because very few have systems built in to manage big numbers. That's a little more complicated to set up. So if you're looking to build a game that's super simple, like an incremental, that is a great challenge as a prototype is, can I program into this game engine the ability to handle big numbers? And then when you start doing that, you're probably going to find out, oh, well, there's two different ways of handling big numbers. There's like scientific notation, and I forget what the other one is, some expression format. But those are two ways that are not natively supported by game engines. How am I going to add that? If I can add that, I know I'm golden. I got the core feature. Now it's about presenting it in a prototype, which is just button, click this button. Now this goes up by 2 times. And there's your gameplay. There's your prototype, right? In terms of presenting that to somebody who would care, you wouldn't talk about the number going up. What you would do is set that to a ridiculous number, like every upgrade gives you like times 50, and you let the player buy in the order of magnitude of scientific notation of like to the power of 24, because that's an insane number, and the system doesn't crash. The game just keeps on going. That there is a technically impressive feat in the prototype stage. right? And so understanding that that's the unique selling feature of your incremental game could be one of, there's many ways to do it, but that's what I'm trying to nail down. When I say a unique selling point or a unique feature, it's that incremental game, platformer in your case, like, yes, nothing's really new. It's really hard to innovate in that space. However, your presentation of it is what matters. And that's what you have to nail down in your prototype.
So then, in like not to get like super far into the prototype, no, don't worry about it.
Prototype as a milestone. I should have clarified that because we're
Well, no,
talking about
oh,
sprints.
I guess I'll say it anyways. So, like in that situation, then, like the art style and the characters and stuff might be important for the prototype. When you say because that when you say presentation, that's what it makes me think of.
Well, when I say
So, what is
presentation,
presentation then?
if I gave you a black screen with a button and you clicked it, and then a button number appeared on the screen, you clicked to the end, and it incremented by 1, that is a form of presentation. You're presenting your literally presenting your mechanic.
Okay, it's a
to
weird thing
your testers.
to grasp, because presentation to me has always been like, like, what's your presentation at school? Oh, it's this board, and now I'm gonna also talk about it. So
Well,
presentation's always just been a visual thing for me. I'll get over it, James. Don't worry about me.
it's the feeling.
Because it
It's
makes
the
sense what
feeling
you're
too.
saying.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are in the same boat as where you're coming from, right? Where they don't really understand that aspect of, I made a feature. How do I do something with this, right? And so that's part of the prototype milestone, right? That you're building sprints towards your first one, which is taking these features, getting the bare basics working, and then presenting it in the style of the game that you're making. You wouldn't just do a survival game where, like, food you just clicked on and then you ate it and then your health bar went up and your food bar went up. Like, you could do that. That is technically, right, on a technical level, that is sound for a prototype. But is that interesting? No. Is it going to allow a game tester, somebody who's checking out your game, family or otherwise, right? Are they going to be able to take what you've presented them and come up with ideas that we were talking about? Are they getting invested in your? No. Why? Because this is just a generic, super basic, like, gameplay template, right? What you need to do is take what's fundamental about your game in terms of the presentation of that mechanic and system, and then show that as the prototype. If your game, a survival game, is you get a shell and you have to align a knife and then, like, do a quick time event to stab open the shell and, like, break it open, and that's how you feed yourself, and if you don't, you hurt yourself. That's an interesting mechanic. Not a lot of games let you, like, open a can of beans and it's like a skill testing game, probably because it's not a good fit for the genre, but nobody's really tried it. Yes, people make cooking animations where you eat from a can, and that blows people's minds. They're like, I love it when games do these. That's fine. It's an animation.
It's true.
But from a developer standpoint, that's just playing an animation. That happens is like, there's nothing innovative there. There's nothing interesting there. But you present a cooking mechanic as a mini game for when you're creating food, like, right? And this is a small tangent, but I created a grill that had objects beside the grill, and you had to turn on the grill. You had to heat it up to a certain temperature, which you could monitor. You had oil that you could add to a pan. You had meat that you throw it in the pan. And then I created a curve-based material system that cooked the material and changed the audio that played. And then when you flipped it over, it had a separate set of data for the other side. So you could cook a steak on a wok, which is the model I had from a random free pack from Epic. But I created an entire mini game around cooking meat. And then I thought it'd be neat if there was a customer who asked for a specific order and I have to cook to that order. And I have to pay attention as a player for how long has the meat been on there, what kind of meat is on there. Now all of a sudden, I can take that system and I can create, like, an algorithm of sorts, a set of data, like a data table basically, and say certain meat cooks at certain temperatures and certain times with certain seasonings, right? And it's just data, it's just numbers in a spreadsheet. But now I've created a mini game that's just like all the other cooking, serving customers, food truck games, except the difference is the mechanics are literally cooking the food. Everyone else's mechanics is like, oh, it turned brown. You better get it. If you leave it too long, now it's cold and the person's sad. Well, I've taken that and I expanded on it, right? So my presentation of that demo mechanic that I showed people was just a grill in a black room. There wasn't even any lighting. It was just like a basic flat unlit light. And it's just like, here's the mechanics. And then all I needed to do to make that feel better after feedback was create a little icon on all the different things that you can interact with. And you see that in a lot of games nowadays where they have a little white dot and then you mouse over it and it expands a little bit and prints out a message. It's like, hey, E to interact. But that's where I started, right? Is I just took an idea. I wanted to see where it was. I showed people. The feedback was, this is neat, but I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing or what I can do. Took it back to the drawing board, and then you keep iterating, right? That presentation, because if I came to you and said, hey, I got a food truck simulator for you, would you care? No. Would anybody care? No. If I came to you and said, hey, I have a game that tracks whether or not you're good at cooking steak. Now it's a challenge. Now it's fun. Now that's interesting. It's like, what do you mean? Right? So I'm engaging the audience. They're going to hop in and I'm leading them to my prototype, my mechanic, so that they could see it and give it feedback within context. Because it's not helpful if somebody comes into your game expecting Subnautica and you're dinosaurs with guns. Like it's not the same, right? It skews feedback. So anyways, that's all prototype. All of this strategy that we always talk about on the show, having a target in mind, figuring out what's required to get there, and then picking what's necessary as a foundation to make it work, and then showing that. That's your prototype phase. And if you
Mhm.
can't do any of that or it's too confusing, then you need help. You need mentors. You need team members who have been through the
Okay,
process. You need,
before we continue to go down this route,
yeah,
what
anyways,
does this have to do with sprints?
sprints, right? Once you have all that and you figured it out, right? The sprints is now taking that chunk of data that we understand now, hypothetically,
Yeah, like the
and breaking it
different stages
down.
of milestones, correct?
Well, not milestones, specifically prototype. Everything I just talked about, the presentation, is the audio necessary? Is materials necessary? Because you had asked me, is a character required? What my answer was trying to be was it depends with an example. So my cooking grill game, I need a wok. I need some models to show different
Character
cooking
you wouldn't need.
materials. Character I would need. If I was doing something like a morphing character where the character could like transform into something, 100% character is necessary.
Is
But
like in that situation, is the character necessary where you've already kind of figured out what the character's going to look like, or could you use any random model, or would then that cause problems like what we've talked about in previous episodes, where it's like once you put in a placeholder, a lot of the time people become attached to the placeholder, and then that becomes what you use.
well, what we're going towards, and I'm definitely not going down this rabbit hole, is the understanding if you're building a Mount Everest and you've never gone on a hike before. So doing something like a transforming character in real time is like a Mount Everest. And if you haven't done a whole lot of games along that kind of transformation or blending in 3D, you're in for a hell of a time, right? So you don't aim that big, you aim smaller. And smaller games typically
So if I
won't
don't know
have
the answer to
needs like
that one
that.
right now, then it's not time for me to do that one.
Exactly. So there's this programming logic. I can't remember. I'm shooting myself in my foot right now. But basically, if you can't describe the problem to yourself, you don't understand enough about, the tool set and the thing, right? The problem to be able to solve it in the first place. So you need to go study. You need to go look up reports. You need to go look up languages. You need input to be able to properly describe the problem. So the theory with this, and it's not just code, there's lots of places where this comes up just in regular life, right? Mentalities, perspectives. But if you can accurately describe what the problem is and why it's a problem, and if there's like an issue that you can't quite figure it out, if you can describe what the problem is, you can solve it. Your brain, our brains are weird. We're weird that way, where we can basically reverse engineer something just from the concept of it being an issue. So it's really handy to think about it that way, where if you're trying to build a game like that and you can't reverse engineer hypothetically and through testing, just iterating, trying to figure this problem out, then this is too big for you. You lack the context and the experience to even approach this project. That's a wonderful sign because it tells you to scope down. It means that like, nope, this is too big. we're gonna pull back. Like, what's a smaller version of this that I can do first to build up that awareness, to build up that expertise, if you will. So yeah, that's a whole different, talk we could talk about there. But yeah, it's recognizing that this is way too big a hill to climb is what I'm getting at. Doing what's involved with that game that I was talking about with this cooking grill was a very big, massive scoped game that I have the designs for. But the pivotal mechanic, the thing that set it apart from all the other food simulators, was the process of actually cooking food. So that's what I built, right? So you can scope it down to the part that's the hardest, that's unclear, that hasn't been done before, and that's what you test. So that's your prototype. The sprints now are trying to figure out step by step, how do we go from nothing to that prototype? Sprints are important in this way because it helps you validate the idea in stages, right? And it helps you also coordinate your team. How are we even going to build this? Who's slow? Who's fast? What do the artists need? What do the coders need? What do designers need? That's what your sprints are for. It's just we have an idea. We're going to start working then in that direction. And sometimes your sprints, the tasks that you assign during, let's say, a 3-week sprint, if we said the 1st of June to like the 21st of June, those 3 weeks, we got 7 critical tasks that we must do for our sprint, which are hypothetically, we need to make sure a character can walk around. Character is not important. We just need the physical actor in the world moving. We need to prove that we can make something move. Second critical thing is it's a jump. And then we need a reason why they can jump. Maybe it's a hazard, trap, something. I don't know what your game that you may or may not be working on if you're listening, but you just isolate those critical tasks and you say, this is our sprint. I don't care about any of the other systems. I don't care about stamina. I don't care about character speed. I don't care about the game design as a whole. I don't care about boss levels. I don't care about narrative because my next 3 weeks are solely around figuring out how am I going to make this character jump. And that sounds really simple, right? If anybody who's tinkered in game development right now, especially like something like Unreal, you'll be like, oh, well, there's a function in there. I just click a checkbox and hit spacebar, and there we go. I'm done. No, you're not done. You just turned it on, right? You have to make it fit your game now. What is your jumping in the context of your game? And if
It's like all of this is dictated by the game design document that we already would have completed before this point.
yes, exactly. So you know right away is like, oh, well, we have double jumps. Oh, we have directional jumping. We have a feature where the player can latch onto a wall, turn around, aim, and then jump off of that point, like a side scroller or something, right? Well, that's a pretty important mechanic to be able to jump on a wall, stick to the wall, turn around, aim, and then jump off. So that should be in your sprints for your prototype. Now, you don't necessarily need to decide right away which sprint that needs to belong. This initial starting point for building out your milestone is just saying it's important. That's an important feature. It needs a task. It needs a separate line to say this is a critical feature, right? And you just list out all the features, like how I was describing, what are the most important things that we need. And then once you have them all, you have to look at them and say which ones require something else to be made. If you don't have a movement system, it doesn't matter if you can jump. You have to be able to move around your screen or your game world. So that's going to be a required task. That should probably be in sprint 1. Jumping can be sprint 2. Latching onto a wall can be sprint 3. And so the idea of breaking it down into phases like this is in terms of like dependencies, right? Longer sprints require more things to be done before you can attempt it. And that's how you structure it.
So it sounds like when what so when I if I'm the person that's helping or not helping, if I'm the person that's going and creating the sprints and figuring out, what needs to be done, I'm going to the game design document. I'm first figuring out what the critical features or things that are required for this game, that would be going like required for the like required for the beta. So I'm figuring out the key critical stuff for that, and then figuring out what do we need to get these created, and then going down to the very basics where it's like, okay, this needs to be made before all of these other things can start. And that's how I figure out the planning of the sprints. And that's
Yeah,
or at least the start of it. And then I'm assuming as I go, there will be other things that come up where we're like, okay, we need tasks for this or we need tasks for that. And it's like, okay, so we also this ended up being more important than that. So now we've got to rearrange this. So a lot of the sprints, and especially in the beginning, and for people like myself, if I was making them with no experience in the regards, it's going to be a lot of juggling and figuring things out as we go. But that's kind of how we would start figuring out sprints.
yeah, and that's how you validate your MVP, right? Your prototype. Sorry, that's how you validate your prototype is figuring out that process. Because if there's any point along that build up to your
Should we
first
be
milestone,
using the term prototype here, or should we be using the term MVP?
I
We've
think
said
of
prototype so far this entire time, but I kind of feel like MVP is more of what we're working towards right now.
well MVP in my I've talked about this lots in previous
I
episodes
know
as
I don't
well.
remember
And
which.
well, there's two versions of MVP, right? Minimum viable product and minimum viable like product for selling, right? There's differences. An MVP for pitching is enough to show all the systems, your potential art, it's your demo, it's your one level, it's hey, the rest of the game hasn't been made, but we made the first 10, 20 minutes of gameplay and it's all perfectly polished, right? In terms of that first 10 minutes of gameplay. That's an MVP that a lot of like publishers and stuff would see because it gives them a perfect idea of exactly what you're trying to make and the direction it could go based off your designs, etc. And then you have MVP as it's used publicly, which is minimum viable product, which is minimum viable purchase is the way I think about it.
Mm.
What would it take for somebody to buy it? And that is typically early access, which, if you remember how I broke down the 5 milestones that I consider to be generic and across the board, that's actually your beta. It's your public beta. It's when the game is pretty well feature complete. There's no bugs, there's no new systems. It's not about adding new, like, oh, here's a new mounting system that was never here before. That's not what the MVP is. The MVP is what do I absolutely have in order to get a gamer or a consumer to buy my product? That's what an MVP typically is. And in the games industry, whether we like it or not, an MVP is usually early access. It's usually the end of a beta phase where you're going to the public and saying, hey, it's early access. We have some kinks, he. But like the game's already been in development for 3-4 years, right? We are well past alpha and prototype stage by the time we are getting towards a true MVP. So a lot of people, and this is where I personally have irritations with this. I just get like, ugh, I'm already tense thinking about it. But when I hear people advise juniors and new people, right, in the industry to like chase after the MVP, I'm like, no, that's such bad advice because there's so much stuff that goes into game development before you even reach what is considered an MVP that they have to do, that they have to think about, that they have to plan for. And what ends up happening is I have people reaching out to me and being like, hey, can you look at our MVP? And I open it up and it's not an MVP. You're not at this stage. So you saying that is a clear indicator of like, whoa, this person doesn't know what they're doing. They don't understand. Also, it's really bad for the predatory people out there who are like, oh, these guys don't know what they're doing. Ha 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 ha. And then, you hear horror stories from indie devs, and a lot of the stuff happened that way. They just didn't know, but somebody else knew and didn't say anything. So, anyways, prototype is the word I want to stick with. I said MVP because that's what we have in our notes, but I realized I don't like that, so I'm not going to say it.
That's fine.
But anywho, Prototype is important because prototypes is allowed to be ugly. It's allowed to be wrong. You can do most of your prototype, get half of it right, and then pivot, and it doesn't affect the rest of the game development, right? That's why prototype is important. If you say MVP, that means nothing's going to pivot. It's the minimum. That's like, this is the standard. So it's totally different mentality.
Oh, that's a really good way of putting it. I can. It's very easy to see the difference between the two of them when you word it that way.
Yeah. So milestone target, prototype. We know all the core stuff to get it going, to get it presenting the way we want, to show all the things that's different about it. We've planned out everything. We've aligned it in sprints in terms of dependency. As you said, we're going to work through it now. Now, earlier, I said movement is going to be sprint 1, jumping would be sprint 2. That seems, especially if you're doing like a 2 to 3 week sprint cycle, that seems like a lot of time, right? Like 20, 40, 50 hours dedicated to just movement. That sounds like a lot to somebody who's new. They're like, oh, well, it's not that hard. I watch a YouTube video, it's like 3 hours, and I have the system. Again, we want to make it ours. It's not about making it, it's about making it ours, how we want it to work. And that takes time. Like you said, there's lots of things that are unplanned, they're unexpected. You're tinkering and you're like, whoa, we never thought of this, but it totally changes the whole perspective. It's still in line with our target, but we absolutely have to change this. This that's what that time gives you in those early sprints. Like having a whole sprint to figure out movement, to have those moments, those ahas, and being like, whoa, like this is the perfect time to do that. You do that after prototype, it gets much harder. And every subsequent milestone gets even harder to try and do
So
that.
I think I just kind of had a little bit of an aha moment when you're talking about like the movement and make it ours. And so correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you say movement, make it ours, you're not talking about just like tweaking settings so that it's, it's like got the movement and the flow that we're happy with. It's like, how does the movement work in the like how we envision a level to be with like interacting or like moving around? You've got monsters, maybe you're fighting, there's things you're jumping over and stuff. It's like making sure that the when we make movement ours, it's making it so that it feels right for all of the different aspects of the game.
Yeah. Um, a great example of this is, let's look at Vampire Survivors. The core mechanic in that game is movement, really. Like there's systems are happening. There's targeting and death and damage and life and all that stuff. Sure. But the main thing that the player can actually do is just movement. I'm moving around the screen and I'm avoiding stuff. Now, for that movement, if we purely looked at that as just like a singular thing, it's just movement, then why does Vampire Survivors or From Till Dawn or what's another one? Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, like why do all those games feel different? Like I'm not talking the combat and the damage and the level ups because all that stuff's all the same too, but they all physically, like when you're playing it and emotionally and visually, they feel like different games. Even though you could just reskin every one of them and they're very close to each other. No offense to any of the developers, right? That they're hearing this, but like that's the game feel. That is game design in its essence. The experience was made and tailored to those specific games to be a specific way. So, yes, that's what I'm talking about. When you make a system your own in the terms of what you want to build, it'll stand apart. It's not just going to be something that you ticked on in the engine, adjusted the speed, and like falls a little slower because we reduced gravity. Now we're unique. No, not really. Like you have to do it within the context of what you're building. That's
And
why
that large
Toybox. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then that larger amount of hours that you said for it doesn't mean that's all just happening at once. That's something where, like, I'm assuming as we continue on, we're gonna be coming back to it. It's like, does the movement still feel right? Let's play around with it here and there and see, like, is this how we want it? It doesn't mean like you're just gonna spend 20 hours and then get it done in that one moment. It's we'll do a little bit here. How is it now interacting with the new stuff that we've put in? How is it now interacting with this new level? How is it now interacting with this other mechanic that we've now implemented in this like farther level down the road? Because you want it to be right for all of that.
Yeah, that's like 100%. Right. That's exactly where we want to be with that. Yeah. In essence, that's sprints, right? It's just planning it out. So what that looks like in execution, right? Sorry, my note I had there when we were talking was toy box. That's why the toy box is dangerous, is because you're not thinking about within the context of a specific project or a specific goal. You're just like, this feels neat. Well, that looks fun. Well, this looks neat. It's like the ADD, right, of game design, where you're just like a shiny thing, and then now I'm a dinosaur riding fisherman, which maybe there's room for that, but because you weren't building a dinosaur riding fisherman game from the beginning, none of it is going to feel like under the same umbrella. It's going to feel like a bunch of little umbrellas just smushed together. And it's like, here's my game. And it's like, well, it doesn't feel good. We see this all the time with games where people play them and they're like, it doesn't feel good. This transition feels bad. These systems don't look good. And, like it doesn't feel like a whole unique experience. It feels disconnected. Like these are all things that we hear all the time. That's the reason why that kind of stuff can come up.
One of the difficulties I see with Toy Box, now that we've talked about sprints I didn't see before, is like we've always talked about Toy Box. You're going around, you're tinkering with different things. With sprints, we know where our end goal is, and so we're planning towards it. And we're making this so that we can work on that, so that he can do that, so that she can do this. But then with Toy Box, it's like, let me try this. Hey, and then you could get into problems where it's like, I'm trying to do this, but I've realized I need this for it now. So, okay, let me go do this. It's like, oh, wait, to do this, I also need this and I need this. And so I go and I work on those. It's like, oh, now this interacts with that and that causes problems there. And so when you have a team of multiple people and they're all like, oh, yeah, let me try this, let me try that, you end up quite quickly. And it's like two people have made the same thing, but to do for their own separate things, but they made it differently. So that same thing can't work with both of them. So now you have two of the same things so that you can get those two things to work. And it's
Yeah,
with
it gets out of hand very quickly. Yeah. But that brings up a great one, where like sprints are the stepping stones to your milestone, right? You build up and then you leave room for yourself to experiment, to test, figure it out, because your goal is whatever the milestone is. It's like, we need these features in 3 months. And if you go over, then that stuff takes you longer. If you get to your milestone before you said you would, that's not a bad thing. That's good. That means you got there quicker. You have more room to tinker in your next milestone, or you have more time to plan out your next milestone, to adjust your timelines, to see, okay, we're actually really good at the coding, but we suck at art. Let's change the timing. So that's really what sprints are good for. They're a good way to contain the toy box. Toy box is great for fitting inside of a sprint. So your sprint, you can say, we're just looking at movement for the next 3 weeks. Go ham, everybody. And then the next sprint, we just look at what are like a retrospective, right? Or
so you
just
can
like
still Toy Box and sprint at the same time.
yes, it's just you need to toy box within the confines of your sprint. So if you think of your sprint as a sandbox, everything inside the sandbox, go nuts. Like this is your toy box. You get to do what you want, but you stay in the sandbox. You don't leave. Don't start tinkering with shooting mechanics. Don't start tinkering with loot drops. Don't start building out buildings and level designs, because none of that stuff is relevant right now. The only thing that's relevant is our moving, our jumping. And if we get those done and they feel good, we could just take tasks that are assigned to like sprint 3 and bump them up to sprint 1 or 2 and keep working, because that's the power of the sprints, is that you created dedicated chunks to achieve something. And if you move faster, great. You just start it sooner. And if you're moving slower, you adjust all the sprints in the future, right? You just add on an extra hour here, an extra hour there, 2 hours there, maybe a couple days here. And so it makes you get a good feel for how you progress through development as a team or even as a solo developer. It gives you a great expectation. One of the things that I challenge a lot of people who come to have conversations with me, right, when they're at whatever stage in their game, is I'll ask them, what's your timelines? Or luckily, I don't have to, and they're just showing me a timeline of what they think. And then I can look at that and judge that and say, No, this isn't even close for the stuff of what you're saying based off of what I'm seeing. And because they don't know that, it's a very clear indicator of, okay, where's the team struggling? Do they understand any of this project management? Do they understand all the minutia of like how their team works after a year of developing together? Or is there going to be a lot of issues down the road, right? And this is how a lot of publishers will look at this situation and say, okay, you obviously don't understand project management. So all of your pitch to us tells us that you have an idea, you think you know what it costs, you think you know why it's great, but you have no, like, you're losing credibility in your ability to deliver it, right? So your sprints are really important, even for indies, even for solo developers, just to track themselves so they can have an accurate accounting, right, of how long it takes them to build things, of what
When you
it
say
takes to plan
important, it's like
things.
it's important for those that are, where their goal with this is to do something, go places, work with other people, maybe join the industry or whatever. But if it's someone who's just like, oh, I'm just here for fun, where it's like, whatever, just go have fun then.
Yeah, like if you're here for fun, you do what you want, right? This like I hope you continue to tune into us so you can learn some new stuff, broaden your horizons. But is this going to prevent you from making games? No, there's
But you
nothing
could also
wrong with
still
just
do sprints and
having
have
fun.
fun.
This is true too. Or you could find somebody who likes doing sprints and let them do it, so you could do the things you like to have fun with. But in any case, no, yeah, all of this information is for the people that want to approach this with a more professional goal with this. Like, I want to work with a studio one day, something that's going to set you apart when you go to get hired and you're talking all about the management and how you fit in with tasks and sprints and all this stuff. Right away, the HR people and the producers probably interviewing you are going to be like, oh, this is awesome. I'm not going to have to hound you. I'm not going to have to explain to you why you had to do things in certain orders. I'm not going to have to explain to you the minutiae of how we're going to build out the software development when all you want to do is model cups all day, right? Like, it gives you a leg up because you understand the process, and not just within the confines of what you want to do, but as a team, as how does a game development studio actually work towards releasing a game? There is a flow to it. There is a process. So is there any questions like with that? Is there anything that still seems like maybe a little out of scope or?
From what we've talked about before, they were already less intimidating than they were, but even now they just kind of sprints just feel like a normal thing. That's I'm excited to do more with,
Exactly.
instead
Exactly.
of just like, oh, good luck, get to go. There's your goal. Have fun.
Yeah, and I think too many people get discouraged for those reasons, like what you're talking about, where they hear planning and it seems like this massive like strategy master level kind of stuff, and people just figure, oh, I'll never be able to do that, and it's not.
Most
It's consistency. That's it.
most wish, not even almost. I think we should have talked about sprints and the ideas of them before doing the game design document, because I think knowing and understanding sprints and the idea of them would have made creating the game design document easier, but then also could have, when putting it together, could have been done keeping the idea of sprints in mind. Which for the most part, I does isn't really needed, but I think it would make it easier, because then when we're writing stuff out and we're figuring out tasks, then there's already the idea of, okay, how would this go into a sprint? Hey, this seems a little bit too big maybe for a sprint, so we got to make sure I'm breaking this down more. And I think it would have made putting together a game design document a lot easier.
For sure. And I'm also a cruel teacher in that way, right? Like, I'm not going to set you up to fail, but I will certainly let you do the hard stuff first and then come in later and be like, look how easy this is. Click.
No.
And then you're going to be, well, I like that
No.
because that's how often how I learn a lot of hard things that I've learned throughout my career, right? Is by doing a lot of the hard work first and then being like, that was dumb. I'm never going to do that
Yeah, but
again. This is
it
much better.
it's different when the hard work teaches core concepts and ideas that makes the easy step fine, because if there's problems that come up, you already kind of know what's going on. Versus understanding sprints before, it doesn't matter.
How many
You say,
have we?
I think this moment right here where you were like, oh, I like teaching the hard stuff first, you just threw that in there because you felt like you could. I don't think you even thought about that. You never thought about you. We weren't doing game design document. And you're like, you know what?
But here's the thing.
Could do
Go
sprints,
back.
but I want Spencer to not understand things for a little bit longer. There was no thought process about.
Go back and look at those documents, or those videos. You will see, and you will hear many times where you come in and you're like, "But why are we doing this? Why are we structuring it this way?" And if you go back now and you rewatch those episodes, you'll be like, oh, this is why he broke it down like this. This is why he wouldn't let me talk about this.
And if you're not saying because of the sprints, don't worry, Spencer, it'll make more sense when you learn about them later.
I didn't say it because of the sprints, but I was already building it that way to begin with. I just wasn't being very clear about it because that's not what we were talking about. But now you have the same understanding.
Coming from the guy... Now, because we weren't talking, you weren't clear about it because we were talking about, Mr. Tangent Man.
yeah. But no, in all seriousness, right? Like this is a great point for a lot of the people listening that you should go back. I would say like 20 episodes, 10 episodes, whatever. Anytime that something's relevant, and rewatch some of those older episodes that we're pointing out, or even just start again, because your context and the awareness that you have for some of the stuff we talk about on repeat through different lenses is going to change your perspective of a lot of the stuff we've done. Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. Like, you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just talking sunshine and daisies. Like, I don't know. There's no right or wrong way, but I do know wandering around in the dark hoping to strike gold is silly. So with that in mind, with your new little lamppost, go back and rethink about a lot of the stuff that we used to talk about with this new perspective, and try and apply it to whatever you're working on. How does this change the way I'm building stuff now? How is this going to change how I'm going to build stuff in the future? Can I see how this has applied to the things I've done? I've talked a lot about the struggles of a lot of indie developers. Are you struggling from similar things? Because you're probably having the same gap of knowledge. There's something in there you're not aware you're missing. And the other reason why I like to teach the hard stuff first is because people don't have an appreciation. And this is proven through my career. People don't have an appreciation for the proper way, the procedure, or the answer when it's just given to them. They just complain. They're like, like naming conventions. I get super annoyed whenever anybody is like, naming conventions, bleh, and they just hate it, right? They're like, they're always hounding me about naming conventions. And I'm like, you fundamentally do not understand the power, the efficiency, the long-term impacts of why you're being forced to do this. So of course you're going to whine and complain. And if you were to step out of your own shoes, spend your own money and your own time grinding to build your own game, and you don't have naming conventions, you're in for a really rough time. Even if you get funding one day, you're one of the lucky ones and you manage to get funding. Well, guess what? Your game's an absolute shit show. And that's where I get hired. I get hired through my main company to come into those projects and basically clean house, fix it, get stuff working. And that's usually what I see, is people who did not follow standard software development, not even games, just generally speaking. And now they're in trouble, and the studio's not happy and the publisher's not happy. And they're like, there's no reason why this cannot be fixed and should not be fixed, except for the people doing it don't know. Right. So this is what we're trying to prevent. I'm trying to put my main company out of business in a way, right? I'm trying to help people understand. I don't think you have to worry about that.
Well, we learned about naming conventions when we were in school, and it took me years and many projects where things got terrible and miserable because of terrible naming and nothing being done properly, until eventually I was like, fine, I'm going to start doing it. And then I love it since. And although there's still some times where I don't do it.
It's human nature. But Yeah, to get back to my main point, I like teaching the hard stuff. I like because it forces you to understand the rules. And then when I come in later with an easy process, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this exactly this way, or at least use it as a foundation properly, because now I understand how it works. I understand why it works. I understand all the reasons for the answers. And now I'm on a solid footing to keep going. If I just give you the answers, you're just going to haphazardly pile them all up to get to where you want to go and not retain anything. And that's no good, right? That doesn't serve the purpose. Even when I was teaching in the colleges, right? Like, or teaching workshops, that's what I do is like I show you a little bit of a harder way to do it so that you understand how to make it work. And then I show you the better way to do it. That's faster, modular, has all the rules and all the
I
bonus stuff attached.
completely agree with you, but I still think sprints should have been done before.
Well,
And you
I actually
saying
think
you
we did
did it
talk about
because
them a
you
long
wanted,
time ago.
we probably did. We probably did, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just didn't really know what they were, and it just went.
that's fair. I mean, there's so much of this has changed. And you know what? I talk a lot, just period, but like teaching and explaining and sharing
No, there's dude.
information
I'm
is a
giving you a hard time. There's so
powerful,
much stuff to go through.
yeah.
There's going to be tons of stuff. We're going to be like, why didn't we know this earlier?
But going through that process in itself, right, for as an educator, right, massively expands your own understanding. Like I've always, I forget who told me this. I think it was Norm, way back, right, in our 2D animation a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure it was him. He told me that the fastest way to learn something is to teach somebody else. I know he's not the original person who said it, but I think he's one of the first people I've heard it from.
I can see him
And
saying that.
yeah, I fully agree with that because my level of understanding of concepts and mechanics and systems and just what's possible with like game tech, right, is a broad term, has grown exponentially over the years when I started to try and teach people how to do small things. And then it just grew like crazy because people are a little lazy and creative in the way where you're like, hey, do this. And they're like, well, I don't want to. I'm going to try this. And then you're like, well, that doesn't really work, but you can make it work if you do this and this and this. And then, like, I just unlocked a way to do something that I didn't know about that I still wouldn't necessarily recommend, but now I have a broader understanding and now I can teach an even better way of like how to combine those two things. Right. So, like, yeah, I firmly believe that you want to learn any topic, try and teach some parts of it. You just
Well,
teach accurately.
don't worry, James. In the future, we're going to have all of these episodes and then a new section of episodes where I'm just going through all the things James should have told us
Yeah.
before he
Spencer
and that'll be the
reacts.
title. Everything James should have let us know about game design documents before the game design documents episode. And
Yeah. That is actually pretty funny. Just like a meta series of you just cutting out shorts, reacting to our own stuff. It's funny.
but it would also be legitimate important stuff, like we would definitely have sprints in that episode.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so like this, I think that wraps up, right? This wraps up all of our talk for the most part about sprints and agile and project management and the scope and the importance and everything else. So like earlier we did the game design stuff because I still think that that's fundamental. Like you have to have a proper approach for what a design could be before you even have a prototype. And then you have to understand what project management is before you can even do agile, right? And then now that we've started on both ends, this episode is kind of like the meeting of both
Yeah,
worlds, and we're
it
like,
is really nice
okay,
to see
this
how it
is
starts to come together and see how it all influences each other.
yeah, and that's totally something we planned.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
totally. We totally planned you not telling us about
yeah,
sprints
yeah,
when we
yeah.
should have learned about sprints.
But yeah, so now if anybody's been following along with a lot of this stuff, it should make sense. Everything should just come and fit together really nice and neat, and you're like, oh, okay. Now's the time to go look at your projects, your past projects, and be like, okay, with those two mindsets, right? Like proper design, proper project management, agile, building a prototype. Like, what did I do wrong, or I could have done better? on all of these little projects. And this is an important part for really retaining but understanding what we're talking about is when you can apply it to things that you have a lot of experience in. All your failed projects, all your little tinkering things, anything that you've tried to build on your own or you've tried to replicate, go look at them with this new lens and you'll see a lot of it. You'll be like, oh man, yeah, I remember this. I remember that. I remember exactly when I did the thing Spencer said, where I just like chased the shiny dot and then it was just a mess. And but now that you can see all those issues, you should also be able to look at them and be like, okay, if I was to revisit this, if I was going to come back and try this again, what would I do different? And that's the other part that's important, right? Like retroactively applying it to things that you did in the past and then thinking about for the future. My next project, if I was going to stop everything, start from scratch today, pick a project, do a little bit of research, how would I start this? How would I design just enough? How would I figure out what's the plan for that? How would I figure out what's the prototype for a game like this? How would I plan out what that prototype development looks like? How would I break that down into sprints? Now that I understand that all those issues I was having before were probably from lack of direction, lack of understanding how to build towards something, right? It'll fundamentally change every project you do from this point on.